Welcome in, everybody. Chris is still talking over on Twitch. I don't think you can actually hear him on this, but in the recording, if we use any of this, you'll hear him. What's up? Boom. If you guys are here as a part of some kind of archive and VOD as we wait for Chris to jump on in, welcome. I'm glad you're here. The comedy show on Friday went really well. I've got some like cold comedy show went really well. We got it filmed, and I'll probably be posting that up as a members post over on Ginger Prime, and we'll have probably turn them into shorts and things like that. So I think we'll see how that goes. But there was a major Blue Protocol news leak today. I have that in the pin comment. I think also a link in the description. So we'll go from there. Chris is on his little tangent. Interesting. So Chad over on Twitch is saying Shadowbringer is probably the worst expansion in terms of content, but the best in terms of story. I have to think about that. Here I got an idea. This is I don't know. You probably won't be able to hear him, but this is what he's doing. He's just talking. What's up, Yamron? All right. He's aware. Hey. There we go. I was just kind of watching and listening to you for a second. Oh, mute the tab. Oh, no. The loop. There we go. Hello. Happy
Monday. Happy Monday.
How is everybody doing over on Twitch? And thank you, Farmer Girl, for those gifted subs. And I think I saw a couple others roll in some Prime subs today. Roll in as a friendly reminder for those of you who are interested. If you guys, whether it's us or any other content creator, if you got Amazon Prime, you get free Bezos bucks every month. January is the leanest of months in terms of content creation and ad spend. And I've seen some other content creators tweeting out their Twitch ad incentive, and I'm assuming I haven't seen ours. I don't know if you've got ours yet.
It's about 70 to 80% down.
Yeah, it's like, hey,
which is on the high end of what's normal, but it's always a big drop. And so January, I saw that on Twitter, like creators who are always on the Twitch side of things and not on the YouTube side of things. This is the first time they've ever seen their revenue tied to ads.
Right.
So it was all new to them. And so then I tweeted out, this is why I take off. So I'm off next week. Woo-hoo. This is why I take off this time of year. So I'm off next week and the following Monday because I would like to take time throughout the year. I like to go skiing. My wife does not. So I can take it whatever week I want because she's going to be at work. She'll be here taking care of Chuck and stuff. And I think her sister-in-law is going to come down and they're going to have a good time. So so I always get out of town. It's like, the best time I could ski in December, but December ad revenue is great. So right. why would I ski in December? I'll ski when YouTube's like, what if we gave you a penny for every $1? I'm gonna leave. So I'll be back.
Yeah.
When the advertisers are back.
Oh, you mean February? Yeah. Things kick back up.
Yeah. So I take
advertisers want to spend money.
Yeah. Right at the end of January, beginning of February. That's when the last of any post Christmas ad spend is all burned up.
Yeah.
And I put that on Twitter, and Jebro's like, yep.
Yeah. They say Ponto got an offer for $40. So it's like, yeah, well, and it's not like $40 in it's 30
$40
seconds
if he hits the hours. So if he hits half of his hours
and throwing the ads in everybody's face. So
if his hours, I didn't see what his offer was, but if his ads, if his is tied to 100 hours and he decides, you know what, I'm only going to stream 50, then he only gets 20 of those dollars.
Yeah.
So you actually divide it by the hours, and that's your hourly rate. And they're saying, it's like a contractor. I will pay you for this many hours I will pay you this much per hour up to this many hours. And once you go beyond that, if it's 100 hours, his 101st hour, he doesn't even get the dollar, whatever that is.
So anyway, if you guys have those Bezos bucks, whether it's Ponto, any the other content creators over on the Twitch side of things, that's a free perk that you guys have, and it, especially in January, can make all the difference in those like Chris and others who are full time pushing out that content. So thank you guys for that support. Links are in the description. Again, it's a manual review, like it's a manual renew. It does not automatically renew, so this is a good reminder of that perk. So just farming those Bezos bucks, baby, and hopefully you guys are all having a wonderful January. There's a lot that going on. The main topic that we're going to be focusing on today's live show is obviously, if you guys haven't been following, Blizzard and Tencent had a falling out. That means WoW is no longer, or is about to be no longer in China. And interestingly enough, Tencent all of a sudden having an MMO looks eerily familiar from some of the reports, and so that's going to be one of our topics. But I know Chris sent me a couple other things. I don't know if we want to jump into that, or if we want to.
Yeah,
like, there's all kinds of little stories we could talk about today. But
let's talk about that first.
All right, World of Warcraft no more in China. It's a big staple in China right now, and that's been due to a relationship with Tencent. The reports were NetEase. Oh, they were. Oh, you're right, because then they had that falling out. Like Tencent and NetEase, I get confused. But along those lines, there was rumors that they might just go to Tencent. But what ended up like being a thing is like basically they said, at least if it's to be believed, translations are that NetEase and that fallout was due to quote unquote an asshole. So it's like there was some negotiation or contract breakdown, and that's how Blizzard was able to be in China. And so now Tencent is coming out with their own MMO that is, and I think it's like called Tarisland, if I'm pronouncing that right. But how do you feel about all this, Chris?
So it was kind of it's a bit messier. So first of all, Tencent and NetEase are both partially owned by the Chinese government.
Yes.
So they are different companies. So I corrected Brian there.
Partially.
But they are a bit like American defense contractors, where like because they're all sharing the same client, their values suddenly get really aligned in some ways, but then they're competing with each other in others. So it starts to create this really weird relationship because they're all I don't know. So it's a weird place where it doesn't function like true capitalism, which like in the US relate that to the defense contract field, relate that to medical, where like everybody's following Medicare's rules. And so it doesn't really function with true capitalism. It's a heavily augmented system. So the Chinese government, obviously known for having a very heavy hand in some matters like this. There is an issue with like what happens when a foreign company comes in and wants to publish games. And so in many fields, if you want to operate within China, you at the very least need a local representation to do the last leg. Kind of like when you mail something, the last leg is the one responsible for getting it to the actual destination. Everybody else is just trying to get it to the right port. That last leg is actually the real job. That's the hard part. And so NetEase acts as Blizzard's publishing arm inside of China. Tencent, I believe, actually has the Activision side of things. And so there's some weird stuff there. And then like this doesn't affect the Diablo Immortal deal because that's on a different term sheet. So, but obviously you have to assume that the relationship going sour is going to affect that deal when it comes up. But effectively, Blizzard felt that NetEase had overstepped in the recent past and was starting to ask for things like creative control and a little bit of pressure, as well as they may have had some awareness that they're not the same company. Same company was releasing an MMO that looks a lot like World of Warcraft based on at least the trailer. Now, lots of MMOs look like World of Warcraft based on the trailer, turn out very different. But it doesn't feel good. The timing is really suspect. And so they said that they did not want to renew their deal. So they go on these 3-year deals with NetEase, and they said, we're not going to renew with you for World of Warcraft. We're going to look for other partners. Then as it comes time for that expiration to come up, Blizzard realizes, oh crap, we don't have another partner yet. So they reach out to NetEase and say, hey, I know I broke up with you and I've been dating other people, but I was wondering if I could stay with you for another 6 months. And while I do, I'm going to keep dating other people. If you would extend the existing terms. Now, any of you who've ever left an apartment and you've said, hey, I just need a couple extra days, most apartment complexes will give you those extra days, not at the same rate you've been paying, at a much higher rate. And Blizzard's like, we were thinking the same rate seems good. So NetEase responded by live streaming them tearing up Blizzard's statue at the headquarters to 30,000 plus people on live stream while drinking the Blizzard drink from there that is green tea, which is a insult that basically calls them like manipulative.
Oh, interesting.
By using slang like, oh, that's weird. Does this mean something? That's weird. Oh, we're all just enjoying this beverage after this hard day's work. So children on children there. So Blizzard is now without a publishing arm because obviously NetEase wasn't going to agree to let them keep working with other partners for a 6-month extension at the same rate. Like, why would we help people?
Yeah, like, how does that help us?
Blizzard has not been able to secure another publishing arm, which I have to imagine if the government has partial ownership in several of your competitors, like, I don't know, it just feels like a small industry. Like, it feels like everybody's going to kind of buddy up. You're probably screwed. So what they've had to do is now they're going to have to shut off World of Warcraft in China, which is a massive market, massive market. And it shuts off like tomorrow when we're filming this, just goes offline and it's done. So with a week's notice, they have to try to get all client data off the servers. So they built a tool to allow MMO players to download their own data.
Oh,
there are a lot of reasons that MMOs don't do this, that it is not meant to be publicly shared data. Obviously, the theory there being that if they find another publishing arm, you'll be able to upload your data. I'm sure nobody will try to add extra store mounts to their account or anything like that. And so
everything is on the up and up.
You're supposed to be able to download this data into this safe file so that you can upload it to new servers if there ever are new servers, and you will have everything you once had, nothing more, nothing less. Imagine that with a week's notice, the tool is not working for a lot of players. Shocking. And NetEase releases a statement that says, that's weird the tool isn't working. Blizzard will be fully liable for anything lost. I don't know, like call them. It's not our problem.
Yeah.
So this whole thing is just a disaster. And to anybody that says like, I don't want my game companies to operate in China, I don't like China or whatever, and it becomes this like geopolitical statement that takes place in gaming, just be aware, like, this is an enormous amount of money for Blizzard. And so if they start being against MMOs that are based outside of China being inside their space, like, it is where a lot of money comes from. And so like, whether or not you're okay with companies just having less money, that's fine. But like, it's not without consequence.
Now, do we know if NetEase is the Final Fantasy 14 publisher? Or is that Tencent?
I have no idea who their publishing arm is. But Square Enix absolutely has a partner as well. Everybody does. If you have a Chinese edition of your game, you have a publishing arm.
And they have actually specific changes. Yeah.
You actually like American architecture firms have to have a Chinese architecture firm be the final stamp on the drawings, even if they do everything else. There's only a couple places in the world that it really heavily works like that, where you can't come in and just like have somebody help you, but like truly has to take it the last mile. The only other place that kind of comes to mind is if you want to build in, Middle Eastern city, you're not allowed to go there unless you're Muslim. Pilgrimages there. I'm drawing a blank on the name. But that's another area where like it's really weird because you end up having to do all your quality assurance over basically like live chats because the non-Muslim architects aren't allowed to go there. Mecca, thank you. And so I had a friend that worked in an architecture firm who got to build some buildings in Mecca. And they said it was this huge mess because normally you like walk the site and they're like, hey, there's something weird happening over here. And they're like, well, can you turn the camera to the left? Or like, can you, and they're like having to take pictures. And like, it was this like big, wild, like, how do you inspect a building when you can't go to the building? So I don't know. It's like probably the sort of template for how we would like build things on Mars or something like that. Like, how do you remotely handle something when you can't go there? Very rarely does that happen. So the world has gotten smaller and China's a big part of it. So what do you do? It seems like Blizzard is unintentionally pulling out of the Chinese market.
Well, I mean, this has been a long like time coming. This announcement, like we were breaking the news, what, 3 months ago or so, and essentially the theory was like, oh, they'll get it figured out. and you think, I mean, Blizzard knows how much money they're gonna be out. You don't think that there's just a way that they just in the ninth out in the 11th hour to be like, okay, well, we're gonna keep it online. We've come to new terms. Do you think those conversations are going off, or do you think they're just like, meh, we're good?
So I think the person that's probably sweating the most is Bobby, because Bobby's job at this point is to get the company sold.
Mm-hmm.
And he's already been dealing with American regulatory bodies deciding whether or not this is anti-competitive for the consumer. They don't care. They don't care if it's anti-competitive for Sony. Is it anti-competitive for this consumer has been the question. And now you have to assume on the back end, Microsoft is like, hey, so if your MMO can't release in China, I don't actually know if you're as valuable as you were.
Right.
Like if people have been mad about the 70 billion number, does the number need to come down?
Well, and does that affect the buyout? Is this a move by him going like, all right, like, no.
So
that's kind of crazy. Well, because this also means other things for other games, right? Like when it comes down to, it's not just WoW. WoW ends up being kind of the bigger number because, like, I think if you actually like do any of the trend analysis, any of the Google analysis, the player analysis, like there's a huge population, a huge driving factor. I think the other running theory is, that a lot of even people in China were doing a lot of the gold farming, doing a lot of that aspect, and obviously, I think that will still continue because they can still, I'm assuming, play with a VPN, and get around the Chinese restrictions themselves. But
so the Chinese accounts work a little differently. So what you're talking about with like people VPNing out and stuff, that's something that I'm sure the Chinese government is not a fan of. But the Chinese accounts, they don't get to just region transfer as it sits, because my understanding is that the Chinese accounts actually have like a government ID tied to them that you have to log in because they want to like track how many hours they want to track everything. But there has been, I believe WoW is in the process of trying to put up what is called like a global region, which is, and then they're going to let you maybe transfer onto that. But like, it seems like the global region is just meant to be Chinese players. like, oh yeah, anybody can play on the global region. Anybody. We were going to start by just moving all the Chinese players over there. And then hosting that out of somewhere else and then letting you VPN to it. I have no idea. The whole thing's a mess, and they're having to do the entire thing in like 7 days notice, which MMOs this big, like they don't move that fast. Even the new ones, even things like New World or the upcoming Ashes of Creation and stuff, they still struggle to roll hot fixes out that are perfect day and date. It's hard, but long running MMOs, Guild Wars, Final Fantasy, WoW, those changes are just much harder because you don't want to break anything. You don't want to lose people's data. The worst thing you could do is have somebody that's been playing your game for 10 years and you just lose their character. And you're like, hey, there were 5 million characters in this data transfer and we got 4,999,999 of them correct. Sorry, yours was lost. That is unacceptable. Like, you have to be perfect. There's no room for error. And anytime there's an error, it's never just one player anyway. It's just a sweeping issue. So the global region is tied to Taiwan, and given the China versus Taiwan situation, you don't see the Chinese government being okay with it. Yeah, that's not going to be better.
Well, and just right, and imagine that,
it's like, not going to be better.
This is horrible, but imagine all of a sudden you have like all these WoW Chinese refuges are now hiding out, and their characters are all in Taiwan. Oh man, yeah, that's a situation. I think it's a self-inflicted situation in terms of like whatever the contract negotiations are, and what will you think it happens tomorrow? Like by the time this video goes up, like it will have already happened. So at the time of this recording, like what do you think the odds are that it actually truly shuts down tomorrow?
I think it goes offline. Now, does it stay offline? I mean, Final Fantasy 1.0 went off for almost a year. They were off for like 279 days or something, weren't they?
Something like that.
They, like,
not counting the betas.
Like, and so MMOs can go offline and come back. They don't usually. Like, the whole idea of a live service game is that there's live service. So obviously games going down is a problem. Like, usually when we're talking about lack of service, we're talking about things like the Endwalker launch or something like that, or long extended maintenances for WoW or something where you're talking about a limited period of time. This could be off for weeks. So this starts to be something closer to more akin to like a natural disaster where like you're looking at something weird that's really atypical. And when it comes back up, how do you say sorry? Final Fantasy 14 made a permanent change to those players' accounts where they have a cheaper sub forever. Like, how does WoW say sorry to the Chinese market if they want back in? If they want out, then they want out. But I just can't imagine an MMO that already doesn't get to partake in things like consoles once out of any major market. I would think you would be asking yourself, like, how do we grow, especially in these other markets? Like as India starts to come more and more, like India is becoming a huge consumer of games. So I have to assume you're already saying, like, how do we get our game into India? Not how do we get it out of China? Pulling out of the market seems bold.
Do you think like Yoshi P's like, well, let's turn on a little marketing campaign for Final Fantasy 14 and invite all of them. Did you lose World of Warcraft? Have you heard about the free trial for Final Fantasy 14? Do you think there's any kind of like, I mean, what other game is there? Because even the new Tencent MMO isn't out.
No.
So like, do you think
Yoshi P was asked during, I think, the media tour, what his thoughts were on like his game having immense success while WoW was struggling, and like if that causes him to make any additional marketing pushes? I believe it was an interview, and he said, like, first of all, he doesn't think it's a good habit to be like preying on other people, because that can that just isn't good ethics. Second of all, like it doesn't always, like, he kind of implied it doesn't always work. And third of all, he talked about just the logistics of it, that it takes longer to spin up a marketing campaign than that. And so there isn't time for them to do like another Tap Like Chocobo event specifically for the Chinese market with 7 days notice. So like, even if you wanted to do it. So while there might be timings that are to their advantage over WoW, and he kind of, the way he phrased it, kind of implied that he doesn't think WoW just tries to put their patch days on 14 days. That like sometimes a patch day is just when a patch day is.
Right.
Like you have to pick a day, and you have to pick a day that works for you internally, and that's already hard enough. So I don't think Yoshi P would jump on that. I think if anything, it would cost him more than he'd gain anyway. I think you would have a lot of frustrated.
The Chinese version is still like behind the global version. And so, it very well might ends up just lining up with another patch or update as well, because you would. I don't yet know if they're on Endwalker, but I know that they're like, it could end up being that they're getting close. Maybe somebody can kind of see what version or patch they're on, but that could end up just like legitimately kind of reproducing what we ended up seeing last summer pre-Endwalker hype. That all of a sudden you have an expansion getting ready to launch. But that, I don't know if they're a full year behind.
Endwalker launched in mainland China March 17th of 2022.
Okay, so they would be getting ready probably for 6.3, or I would assume. Along. Yeah. All right, great. So yeah, like picking up natural hype coming from an update, it has that natural tendency anyway. So it could end up just being kind of very fortunate. That's the thing about development, especially typically sprints and releases tend to be on Tuesdays, so that like at some point, whether intentional or unintentional, these things tend to line back up.
So I don't know. And I think DW's right. Like, he could look like a vulture here, and if he does nothing because he has a game that has consistent updates, he likely comes out ahead regardless.
Right. Why spend the money?
All other MMOs come out ahead if it goes offline, because those players aren't going to suddenly stop playing MMOs. Some might, but there's some portion that will just move on to the next MMO and start spending their time and in this case, money elsewhere, because that's really the biggest impact to us outside of the region. Being one of the players affected would suck, but to the rest of the world, it's the money that comes in from that region is how we will feel it more directly, beyond just having empathy for your fellow player. I understand there's people that aren't fans of China, but like, we're not talking about Chinese government right now. We're talking about Chinese Final Fantasy 14 players. And like, I don't root for them to have a bad experience.
The how soon do you think that actually impacts the budget? Because just like where we saw with Final Fantasy 14 and like the Asmon wave that happened, they were asking like, hey, with all these new players, like it's like, well, that's we've already kind of budgeted this stuff without this essential wave. This, it is great to see this, but like these things take time and planning and resources. You don't just hire for the peaks. Otherwise, you run into a situation like with Microsoft and a lot of the big tech companies are right now with massive layoffs, just like rolling out, and you go look at the numbers and it's like, oh, they also overhired, and this ends up being a correction in that same kind of regard, especially with the current state of the economy. So I don't think you'd want to see a company have like that quick of a pivot, especially when like, okay, things were going well, all right, this is going to be the financial impact. I would hope that Blizzard and WoW has already their budget established based off of what it's been, and this might have a bigger impact on something like 11.0. I don't think you would see the immediate impact, but do you have a different theory?
I think that as Yoshipi's talked about the development path and when they start writing the story for the next expansion and when they start building the zones, as we over the years, the different panels at things like FanFest have kind of shared some of that timeline. And then we listen to the Preach interviews, which have been really clear on what's going on at WoW beyond things what like BlizzCon and Bluepost have done historically. I think it looks like both of these games run on 2-year dev cycles. And so it's not just 2 years as published to players, but it's 2 years internally as well. And so I think WoW would have to be offline for 2 years before you start seeing anybody really make some massive pivots based on the amount of money. I also think that some games probably lean harder into the Chinese market aspect than others. Some games probably are trying to release largely the same game, minus what, the different conduct boards or whatever make them adjust. Whether or not it can have various like symbols or things that are like a rating board, right? Like if you had to release things different for EU and the US based on trying to keep it the T for teen here in the US, like you would make your adjustments. But that there is a portion of that happens uniquely for China. But beyond that, I think Final Fantasy is probably trying to be largely the same game. So it benefits all of us as opposed to a game that maybe feels a lot different in China. The bigger question is what happens with cash cows like Diablo Immortal. So what happens to Blizzard if this causes that deal to be up in the air? And is NetEase doing this all symbolically, but really it's just about the money? Because if it's just about the money, they'll keep Diablo Immortal. Like I have to assume it's making a ridiculous amount of money.
I don't know how much here in the West it is anymore, but like in terms of just like it printed its money, it covered its cost for sure. And then
it seemed like the goal was, what if we got a giant paycheck for the Diablo franchise? And they're like, okay, well, we have a slider from like players appreciate you to money made. Where would you like to be? Oh, we want to be all the way on the money made end. And then they just shipped it. And then when people are like, well, don't you want to adjust the slider back down? They're like, we kind of already picked our spot on the slider. Right. So we're happy with it. So
I was thinking that they had the option if they chose to execute it of, oh, okay, guys, look, we listened. We got your feedback and we made these adjustments and now we're the good guys again. And
Diablo 4 is gonna have a battle pass, which battle passes on their own. You and I are actually kind of a fan of them and think they might be one of the future monetizations that comes out most fairly. Obviously, up to each individual implementation, but different in general, they can. It is possible for a battle pass to be done well, and so we're kind of like not immediately dismissive of those. But Diablo battle pass as a phrase that's got some bad connotation now. So I don't know that like Diablo gets to have a battle pass, but Diablo 4 is going to.
It's going. It's so funny and also sometimes unfortunate because it's like you end up getting these like really piss poor implementations, and that has a rippling effect whenever because that makes it difficult to talk about. Like I've talked about and actually praised like the Halo Infinite Battle Pass. We could talk about their recent struggles and whole layoffs.
I can't even listen to them anymore.
It's like they no more talk 343. Like they got rid of all the leadership. Like the leadership was clearly a big problem. with what's going on in that
Yeah, but
studio.
now
But
are they leaderless? Like, what's the
no, I think they've been putting in the people. But
great
who
news,
knows?
guys? We don't have a captain anymore.
Cheers. We,
It's like,
we
is
threw
that better?
we threw the captain overboard.
Who is
Excuse
driving?
me. The ship is rudderless, and we are sailing into the unknown. The No, so it's like when it comes down to it, but then also like the Minecraft battle pass like works great. Like you can buy it, you can choose to equip whatever battle pass you want for the season, and you can play. And it's been really great. Like I've really enjoyed how they've structured that. And the fact is that I'm not forced to go and grind it. It actually makes me play more than less. It's interesting, and maybe that's just with how I've gotten older, where I think maybe, yeah, I get the idea like, oh, I'm going to get this thing grinded out, versus now I'm like, oh man, I'm just not going to purchase it. And I'm not going to be sitting here feeling like I gotta grind it. And that's one of the things that I hope with whatever that, cause they changed Destiny's, season pass to what they call an annual pass. And I don't know if that will have any implications on what this next year of Lightfall looks like, but that would be one change that if they said they did, that would be great, because I always find myself, especially before a new season drops, really wanting to play and like, oh, I got time. It's 2 weeks till the next season. But then it's like, but none of what I'm doing will actually carries over. Nothing benefits me because it all resets here in 2 weeks. And it's like, well, I know I'm not going to finish it. So I usually end up holding off and waiting to start.
I'm about to finish the Call of Duty one, and I actually was really impressed because
I like the Call of Duty one.
So the most valuable prize, if you did spend the money, the most valuable prize, in my opinion, is like right at the beginning. It's 5 or 10% in, so everybody's gonna get it. The single thing that I was most excited for, I got almost immediately. Also, like, it has me use their premium currency, and their premium currency is given to you like every Call of Duty you buy. And so like I had enough premium currency to buy it with no cost out of pocket, so I just took the plunge. But like you earn it back, so by the time you're like 60 or 70% of the way through the battle pass, you've actually earned back all the premium currency you spent. And so there's these like soft caps where I felt like I got the item that I wanted really early, and then I got all my money back if I just played a reasonable amount. And then there's actually more premium currency waiting if I finish it out, which just gets me like ahead somehow. Which, since the only thing I spend their premium currency on is their battle passes, it's like, okay, so now if I ever don't finish one in the future, I've kind of purchased like insurance against that.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of like, it makes it feel like if you just play a little bit more, that'll help you, but you don't have to finish it. And then as soon as you do that, it's like, okay, if you play just a little bit more, that'll help you, but you don't have to finish it. And that constant reminder that I don't have to finish it has actually made it never feel like it's pushing on me.
Yeah.
And as a result, I always feel like I'm getting rewards. I enjoy my time when I'm logged in. And oddly enough, I'm going to finish it, which is weird because like I haven't spent this much time this early on with a Call of Duty in a long time. And so whatever Diablo does, that's what it's got to catch from me. And I assume this, from that standpoint, this might be good news from the West, because if they were trying to come up with battle pass systems that worked more universally across the game to make sure that they didn't have to make that many changes from West to places like China, them like maybe Diablo 4 isn't going to publish in China. And so maybe they can have a much more Western centric model, which of course, with us being, Western addressed, we would probably appreciate that because we've kind of grown accustomed to playing games a certain way. It's a global game. So like I understand that there's certain design features that have to be thought of globally.
Yeah.
But if you start getting locked out of part of the world, maybe they can afford to be a little closer to like an indie where you're more focused on just the way your one market consumes things. I don't know. There might be a perk in there somewhere for everybody but Chinese players. Like it sucks for Chinese players. And I see a lot of people posting this like, screw China, I hate China, whatever. But like, I don't hate Chinese gamers. Like the idea that there's some guy that's just like me and just likes playing video games. Like I don't hate that guy.
And is systematically oppressed. Like, oh, you want freedom? I'm glad that you don't have that game that you were able to kind of escape your totalitarian.
Anything I disagree with based on China actually makes me feel worse for the Chinese gamers, not better. Like I don't know. Let people play games.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see if any impact and fallout there is. So we'll keep an eye on that and keep rocking and rolling. But that's really kind of our main topic. There's other things kind of going on. I'd like to pick Chris's brain about if he's game for it. But I know you also sent over a subject, and I didn't know if we wanted to save that for like our video tomorrow, our live stream.
Urgent.
Yeah, it wasn't urgent. It was interesting though, because it feels like somewhat our philosophy, what we've expressed, is starting to becoming better understood within the MMO space. So keep it locked here. We'll talk about that one tomorrow. Today, as the review embargo has been released for Spoken. So one of the big key items, just because like I'm still in, I'm gonna play that game. I hope it's good, but overall, like I think the reviews are generally coming in at a B plus, kind of game. It's like when you think about it, and that's perfectly fine. Like it's like if the game's fun and you enjoy it, and find a reviewer who kind of aligns with that. But there's not going to be many reviews. And what I was seeing from SkillUp today and a couple others is that nobody has a PC review. There's no, out of all the reviews, are all PS5 based and no PC based, which has some people concerned that the PC version is going to be a mess tomorrow. I'll be able to find out soon enough because that wait is not long. But Chris, like when it comes down to it, the only thing that I find personally frustrating in all of this is Square. Like, why is Square Enix still somehow boycotting GeForce Now? Because when it comes to that 4080, GeForce Now just rolled that out to those of the premium tier. And when it comes to playing this game in ultra settings, a 4080, which did not exist unless the game got delayed, which is the biggest interesting piece of it all. Like, oh, it got pushed from October so that it wouldn't conflict with WoW Ragnarok. Oh, the card it requires didn't exist in October. Interesting facts. So it's like I know you're not like this isn't a
game on 3080.
Yeah, I have a 3080 as well. So
I'm way out of date now. So I think that the lack of PC reviews is concerning, but what likely that tells you is they didn't plan for that card releasing, so they didn't think people could have the recommended experience, and they don't want people having review copies because that they would have decided on the review list a long time ago. And so the review list, you don't want people reviewing your game that aren't at least playing it on your recommended settings. So I don't think it's weird that they didn't give out any PC copies because the recommended spec didn't exist when they would have originally curated this list of people they were going to give review copies. The fact that they didn't go out early is weird, but not impossible that the game is good. But the GeForce Now thing, I have to assume that's money. So I have to assume that any company that's against it, Blizzard is against it. But then all of a sudden, Blizzard is in the process of being acquired by Microsoft. I don't know at what point they knew that. And so all of a sudden they're like, well, what if we were an xCloud streaming game exclusive? That's the only streaming service we run on. We don't run on NVIDIA. And so any company out there that does not have publishing ties to a group big enough to negotiate a deal with one of these companies, why would you not just be on all of them?
Right.
I think there's a common misconception that like being able to stream the game means you don't have to purchase it. You absolutely still have to purchase it. And so these companies, it's letting them sell games to more people. You're now getting to sell it to everybody with a 4080 and everybody who has the internet connection and the extra money to pay every month for access to GeForce Now. So like my brother, his computer at this point, I don't know how it runs Word, but he runs GeForce Now.
That's great.
And so he plays a ton of games on there and he has a blast. And so you're literally ruling him out as a consumer, and he plays a ton of Cyberpunk and games like that. So like Forspoken would be right up his alley. And now he would not be eligible because you don't want to be on GeForce Now. That makes no sense to me. It's given him some really premium experiences on games because a lot of these like Cyberpunk type, these big titles, God of War, all of these, they're meant to be really beautiful. And you are always on the best hardware if you're on one of these subscription-based services. And you do have to have access to good internet, so that geographically limits who all has GeForce Now as an option. And it requires a constant subscription from him. So that's something that it's not everybody, but it's definitely an additional set of players above and beyond the early hardware adopters.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like a weird line to draw. I don't know what the reasoning is there.
I just find I keep using GeForce Now more and more. I use my Shadow PC, like more and more. But GeForce Now, especially with how it works with the like the handheld that I got last year and XCloud, it really is just the funniest thing because Stadia shut down. And it's like, you ever wonder if like those two companies were like, or that company itself who released this hardware was like, oh, by the way, yeah, we Stadia would be perfect for this thing. This is great. And it's like, oh, and it's gone. But it's got at least GeForce Now and XCloud, and then Shadow PC doesn't work on that device, but at its core, like I think it's going to become over the next 10 years more and more integrated into a lot of people's play space. That's one of the things that I find myself frustrated at Nintendo Switch is that it's physically hardware that I either dock or what have you, and then anything else that I can generally stream that works great. But obviously, like I do a lot more gaming at home. And if you go out on the road, I don't have constant internet access, and so that's where the Switch has, it takes the cake because you can still play Mario in the car. We're not streaming anything, but we've been doing a lot more Minecraft Dungeons. We've been doing a lot more Xbox Game Pass in this house, namely because of the fact of XCloud. It allows us to stream these games, and it just makes it so much easier to kind of get in and get out. And from a form factor perspective, I've really, really appreciated it. But so that's the Forspoken thing, because we'll find out. I'll find out tomorrow. Like I'll run it on 3080. It does, like the PC features they listed sound great. They have ultra wide support. I have an ultra wide monitor. Like my thing is, can I run this game? I don't need it to be in 1440p, which the monitor is, but I want to run it at least 1080p ultra wide at 60. If I can hit 60 frames a second, I'll be very happy. If I can't, I'll let you guys know how that breakdown goes in terms of the 3080s and hit, like, what does it take to hit 60? And we'll have to see. And ultimately, the thing I've been saying to a lot of people is that if you're concerned or you're worried, honestly, Forspoken, like out the gate as a single player RPG, it's going to be discounted. It's going to be on sale. It's going to be a part of it, probably a game subscription service within 6 months, if not sooner.
Yeah. On the Stadia note, DW, you highlighted DW's comment there.
Yeah.
The thing about GeForce Now and Shadow PC is you don't buy the games on those streaming services. So if my brother wants to move streaming services, he owns the game, as opposed to Stadia was a totally different animal. You had to buy the game on Stadia for Stadia. And so that's totally different. GeForce Now uses my brother's Steam library. He owns the game on Steam, which means if he wants to drop GeForce Now and he goes out and buys a
good PC.
gaming computer today, or he moves over to Shadow PC, he can cut ties with GeForce Now immediately.
Yeah,
he owns his entire library. You only, like, GeForce Now does not sell games at all.
It's like renting a PC.
It's literally going to a LAN cafe and logging into your Steam account remotely. That's it.
And that's the biggest thing. Like, we've seen some publishers push back against GeForce Now because they can't sell you another copy. And I continue to have made the argument, you're not selling a copy because you're not putting it on the making it GeForce Now compatible, which I don't think there's anything that extra they have to do. They just now have to grant permission that GeForce Now can stream it. What's interesting, like, this is like, and the thing that's kind of mind-boggling is that Stadia was a Linux-based backbone, and the framework for that was a Linux operating system, where GeForce Now is Windows. So it's like there's nothing like extra. Literally, like, if it runs on Windows, it can run here. And yet they continue to restrict, because I think some people were like, oh, well, we want to sell another copy, or figure out if we can bundle, like what most likely would be is they're trying to see if they could say if they could start bundling stream service rights with the game. Like, if you buy the deluxe edition, you can stream this game. We've seen these publishers try to monetize and pull any extra value that they can. But here's the thing, as a kind of a final thought on the Forspoken talk, as we kind of put a pin in Forspoken and GeForce Now discussion. Because when we talk about value of games, like $1 per hour fun as a framework, it can always scale and it can be different based off your experience. But Forspoken is the first game, especially on PC, that starts at 70. So, and then in in Europe, I think they were saying it's 80 euros, but this is not a $60 game. I don't think this is a 60 or a 70 hour JRPG. So from a value to perspective, that's one thing I wish reviews would actually account for, right? Like if it's coming in and saying like the general consensus is I think the Metacritic score has got it in the 60s right now. Like if it's in that regard, like is that price being impacted of the score? And if it was like the game was $40 or $20, does that impact, or should that impact a kind of a gaming score? What do you think?
I don't think it does, because I think you're looking at people that get review copies anyway.
Yeah.
And I think they're assuming standard pricing. And so then what happens is, because it doesn't, as that review ages, it doesn't adjust. It does for you and I, because we want to play a lot of games and we have limited budgets. So it is a factor. Call of Duty was, I think, 75. So Call of Duty this time around was a lot. I've already came out in October. I've got 60 hours in it. So I'm almost break even. And I've had a lot of fun and a lot of good laughs in there. And so like that was my first game to buy well above. I bought my nephew a copy of Pokemon, and the new Pokemon was 65. So we are starting to see that $60 price point break pretty regularly now. And we're seeing it break the other way too. There's a ton of things like Untitled Goose Game and all these things that have been in recent years that are Vampire Survivors that are immensely well adopted, that are well below the $60 price point. So I think people are starting to just say like games don't have to be one price. Like it would be weird if you walked into a restaurant and like everything was one price and they're like, we're just going to give you the amount of sweet potatoes that's equal to a steak. And like, you just get this tiny steak and you get this like bucket of sweet potatoes. And you're like, that's disgusting. Why can you just give me a reasonable amount and then just let the price be different? And so like letting games kind of be priced where it's appropriate is better. Dwarf Fortress, I think, is at like 30. And so saying like, here's what we think is a reasonable amount, I think is a healthier thing. Forspoken saying it's a $70 price point, then I don't know what you're doing. Like maybe you think those hours are so theatric that with ray tracing and all that, like I should be willing to pay $2 per hour, but like that's not where you and I put our value. We're not looking for like this Michael Bay, the video game. We're looking for good gameplay, or a good story told, or good time with friends, or something like that, where I am getting more value out of something like Among Us than I am out of a game that's truly stunning. Yeah. I enjoy that it's stunning, but I'm not willing to pay you the amount more that it costs to make them stunning. And so 70 is going to be a price point that would be really hard for me if it ends up being a 20 or 35 hour story. And then there's no replayability. My brother's through he's on like his 4th or 5th clear of Cyberpunk. I don't know that Forspoken is promising that. Some games do, some games don't.
And DW says that also a good point on replay value, because yes, there's definitely value in replay. The idea is that the framework is dollar per hour of fun, and that again is going to change based off of the type of game. And some games I might have a really good time, pay 70, but I only put 20 hours into it and really enjoy my experience. So it does vary, but looking at that as a foundation, and excellent job if you're clearing Mega Man 2 in 20 minutes, which cheers the tip of the hat to that, because you're absolutely right. Like replay value ends up being an aspect of it. You could think of kind of speed clears and all kinds of ways. You own the game, play it however the heck you want. If you've just finished it for story, who knows? We'll have to see how that plays, and I think it's going to be pretty cool to see in the long run. I'm looking forward to being able to give you guys hands-on from a PC perspective, and so be looking forward to my channel probably here in the next couple days as those videos get ready to roll out. And all right, Chris, we got about 10 minutes left for the show itself. Is there any specific topic? Because the only thing I could think that I'd like to kind of get your impressions and thoughts on are Destiny, but that's really still a little bit away. And I know that's one of the games that you like to revisit, but you are also playing 4 MMOs right now, and but I'd be kind of generally curious about that. So we could save that for later this week. Do you have any specific thing that's on the top of your head?
No, I mean, I'm excited this week. Like, I don't have any big topics, but this week I'm excited that Ultimate Omega drops tomorrow. Patch 10.0.5 drops tomorrow for World of Warcraft, which begins. That's the first piece of their kind of promised roadmap. They said there would be one. They didn't give a date at the time they said it, and so this is it. So we are going into 10.0.5. It's got a neat idea for monetization. So what they've done is we're going to have a trading post that I think it officially goes live February 1st. And so every month, every active account is going to get 500 trader bucks or whatever they're called. And so you're going to get your little currency. And then throughout the month, if you want to, you can basically Final Fantasy Wondrous Tales do a variety of activities to earn up to another 500. But the total number of activities available are well beyond 500 currency worth. And so it's all sorts of things like run old content, run new content, do crafting and gathering, do PvP. Like it's supposed to be all this stuff at different group sizes, different difficulty levels, different amounts of time. And it's all supposed to give you this kind of experience that gives you these currency. And the currency, you choose your own adventure. And it's account wide. So if you want to do the old stuff on a druid and the new stuff on a warrior, it all goes to the same place. And then this account wide currency buys a mix of, in theory, old and new cosmetics. And they're talking about it bringing things that have like historically been locked to the store or the trading card game or things like that. So previously things that maybe people who only believe that an MMO should cost a subscription have felt were locked away from them. And so this could be a big change in the way we think about monetization in World of Warcraft. The fact that if I just play the game, that is enough. And it ends up kind of acting like this month-long battle pass of sorts where you get the first half for free. And then the second half, you just earn as much of it as you want. And they said that when items show up on the trading post, they won't just show up once and then never again. They'd like them to be on repeat. But 14 said that about Unreals, and we have yet to see one loop back. So I would definitely grab it while it's available. But that's what drops this week. We kind of find out a little more how all that works. And I'm excited about it because I think with MMOs, there's been this weird line between people who have more than the minimum cost and people who don't. That's the hardest line to cross. Once you cross, you have people that can spend $40, people that can spend $6 billion. And they all seem to get put in the same group. But there's this minimum price group who are like on free versions or are on bare bones subscriptions. And then there's everybody else. And some people, it's not an issue of money they have. They're like, no, I'm just not crossing that line. Because once I cross, it all gets muddy. So like this starts to blur that and say, you know what? If you play a lot, we're good. And it kind of makes you this, I guess, like retention partner. I don't know. It's something interesting where you start to say it's something you've asked for in 14 for a long time that like, I wish there was a chance to get store mounts as a super rare drop rate. And this says
super, super rare. Like in the point where it's like you go a couple years and you're like, there's been 100, you're like, and again, like putting it out there in interesting ways, but I know it'd be very annoying. Like, oh, you opened a random chest in that dungeon and you're like, because then all of a sudden it's I don't know, it's challenging because you would still have people take on the mindset that if they play enough, they're going to get it. And in my worldview, it's 100% RNG. So you could literally have somebody for the first time open a box and you can get this mount. And there's a real world value to that because you're like, oh, I just got the lunar whale. Like that's, oh my gosh, like guys, can you, like, this is incredible. Like you would want to share it. Right. But then you have the guy like doing it for, I've opened 1 million chests and I've never gotten it. And it's like, there's no guarantee. It's just luck. And
I don't like any drop rates below 0.1%. I think at 1,000, at 1 in 1,000 is the worst it should get. When things cross below 1 in 1,000, that just, because then it's no longer a goal. It's truly a lottery ticket. At 1 in 1,000, MMO players can absolutely say, this is my objective. I will get it. And then I'm going to clear it every day, twice a day, and sometime before ideally 2 years, it will have dropped. So
I don't know. What do you guys think? Because my perspective of it is that if then, like from a store mount perspective, that if it's in the game, fully RNG, like no totem driving aspect of it, literally just random happenstance. The option is to go buy it, or maybe you just get crazy lucky. And then chat's also asking about a pity system, but man, that's difficult because the game subscription base, we know these mounts support these games, and then financially that's a big driver. I need to put more thought into that because especially when the concept of a pity system, because I guess that would take off the burn. Because, oh man, whenever you translate though money to in-game time, because Chris talked about it like, it doesn't matter, I'll run it and do this for 2 years, and I'm gonna bound to get it. Somebody's gonna immediately look at that like, I could go and easily earn enough money for that mount by working an hour at my job, and so I don't know, like, at some point I guess we just have to say, like, if you're gonna complain about monetization, perhaps these aren't your kind of games.
I prefer it being tied to this trading post, or in 14 terms, kind of the Moogle Tombstone event. I prefer saying during the Moogle Tombstone event, that's what it is. That's what the trading post is. It's on circulation. It's only available 30 days at a time. Moogle Tombstones are 29. It's identical. So I think let Cash Shop be Cash Shop. And if you're going to cross the line, cross it during temporary events. Put it on a Twitch drop. Put it on an in-game event like Moogle Tombstone. I think the permanent thing starts to blur it too much, and it starts to create an element of prestige that starts to imply that if you play the game enough, it's the same as just spending money, and you really are better off just spending the money. You really are better off, like, at those drop rates. It's crazy.
Now Jordan over in Twitch chat says, what about using the Final Fantasy pity system of the achievement currency? Would you think that would be an interesting thing to utilize for like a Cash Shop mount?
Well, I mean, as a player, sure. Like, would I love to get something for nothing? But that, remember, it's also added to the game
paying
for
a
the
subscription.
purpose.
You're not.
Yeah, but the goal is to collect money beyond subscription. So, like, would they as a business do it? No, for all the same reasons that 11 is not in the same subscription. Like, at the end of the day, they're doing the math and saying, what makes us more money? Like, Square Enix is still a business. And so, like, I would rather if there were just no Cash Shop mounts and they were all available in game and they were all farmable in various dungeons. That'd be super fun. But, or raids or whatever, tie it to weird content. Have every piece of content in the game have a mount tied to it.
Yeah.
All of it. Every fate, everything has a mount. Everything has a 1% drop, every mount in the game. And there's no Cash Shop mounts. But, like, I understand why Cash Shop mounts exist. Things like Moogle Tombstone events with the Falcon, or things like this trading post where they're bringing back maybe trading card game mounts and things like that, or the Feldrake mount that they brought back during the Twitch drop event for WoW launch. Those kind of blur that line, and they blur it in a really intentional way. It lets them drive focus to a specific thing. So I think the devs don't feel like they're having to give away something for nothing, but the player base feels like they're getting something special.
Yeah. Well, guys, that is our Monday show. Join us tomorrow, where we're going to kind of talk about some Reddit discussions going on over the idea of the seasonal MMO player and how that seems to be kind of the be all end all, and maybe we'll get some thoughts of what Chris is thinking about Destiny and Lightfall. Maybe Friday, unless you guys have big topics. So please keep sending them our way. Get involved in the Discord or come hang out over on Twitch. And just as a friendly reminder, again, if you have those Bezos bucks, that Amazon Prime sub, be sure to be dropping that, especially in January, on any content creators you like. Lots of great people doing lots of great things. But the ad revenue on YouTube and Twitch is it's the first time for Twitch people to really be like, oh, this ad revenue is great. Wait, where'd it go? And
is this why YouTubers take off 1 or 2 weeks every January, February? Yeah.
What?
Yep. We're not all vacationing together. We're just all not working.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay. So just as a heads up, that's a great way of supporting the content, both here or anywhere you can find it, here on the YouTube and the Twitch side of things. So Chris is going to continue on his day. You're going to some PvP, and what else are you working on in Final Fantasy right now?
Well, I want to talk about like all the Omega mechanics and stuff and go through that so that I'm prepped to view Ultimate, like viewer prep, so you know what you're looking at. So I want to do a little bit of that. We ran Euphrosyne today and ran some PvP, and I got some melee jobs up into the 600s. Ooh. So it's been nice to start pushing gear up a little bit. So just having a good day.
Good deal.
I'll be in WoW tomorrow watching Ultimate.
Okay, so WoW and tomorrow watching Ultimate. And then great, awesome. And I got my comedy show filmed, and I am supposedly gonna get that video and some footage and stuff, and we'll see if we can't do some fun things, because I know people have been wanting to see my stand-up.
My wife really wanted to go. My sister bought a house this weekend, and so we were family tied, so I would love to see it.
Well, for $1, she hits that membership button over on Ginger Prime. She'll get to see the whole set. Otherwise, I think I'm just going to break it up into the shorts. and whatnot. So, and hopefully we'll all have some more future announcements because the show went, I think, really, really well. All right, guys, I'm gonna hit end broadcast over here on the YouTube side and wave it out.